Last week, a police helicopter had to abort a stolen car chase in the San Francisco Bay Area town of Martinez. Why? They were on a collision course with a drone gone rogue. Tonight on The Buzz, we talk with the pilot of that drone and his lawyer about the perils of flying drones and what you must know to protect yourself. Next, how do you pick the right camera for your project? And as a hint, it isn't necessarily the camera that you own. Kendall Eckman, the regional manager for Western North America for Blackmagic Design, explains what key camera specs mean and how to find the right camera for your next film. Next, Lynette Kent is a professional photographer who travels the world recording amazing landscapes. She's also an unconventional computer guru and one of the leaders of the Adobe Technology Exchange of Southern California. Tonight, she talks about traveling with pro photo gear, taking pictures, and the art of being a pro. All this, plus Tech Talk, a BuZZ flashback, and Randy Altman's perspective on the news. The Buzz starts now.
Tonight's Digital Production Buzz is brought to you by Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com and by Blackmagic Design at BlackMagicDesign.com.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
And welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Our co-host, Mike Horton, is decided to hang out at home. Can you believe this? I mean, hello, Mike, you there?
Yeah, I got more important things to do than hanging out at home there, Larry. That's pretty much the bottom line.
You know, I was just thinking, we're about a week away from Christmas. Are your holiday decorations up?
Well, yes. Now, do you do Christmas trees?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, I do a Christmas tree, but I do a Christmas tree, probably like most people, it goes up about 3 weeks before Christmas. I don't know why everybody does that, or 2 weeks before Christmas. Most sane people do it like the night before.
Well, no one has ever accused you of sanity.
No, so we do it like 3 weeks before so we can panic during the entire Christmas season. And this year we decided, for some silly reason, to put it right in front of the fireplace.
Okay, that strikes me as a real problem.
And of course, we don't have a fire this year because we're just not going to put a fire because the Christmas tree is right in front of the fireplace. No, this is true because we usually put it out in the living room, and we've never used the living room since we've moved into this place like 30 years ago. And in fact, all we do is pass it going through the front door and say, hi, living room. So we put it in the family room, but the only place in the family room is to put it in front of the fireplace.
But that means you can't have a fire in the family.
And we still panic about the whole dryness thing and the Christmas tree exploding. I mean, you hear all these exploding Christmas trees. I don't know how that happens, but next year, for sure, we keep saying that. Let's just put it up the night before and then take it down the day after.
You know, I had no idea there was so much trauma associated with your Christmas tree.
And there's a lot of science, too, so there you go. But it's like going into the garage, and we got like 5 containers of Christmas decorations and all these wonderful Christmas ornaments that go back, 40 years to the little babies and all that other stuff, and that sort of thing is really, really fun to do.
Oh, it really is.
It is a lot of work, especially putting lights on a Christmas tree. Who does that? You?
Oh, yes. About 17 strings of lights, and our ornaments go back 80 years, so I know exactly what you mean.
Of course, more trauma, because it's, that usually says, do not attach more than 4 strings together. And it's always 17.
I've never, ever paid attention to that.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
So I'm going to go back home and discover the smoking remains of my house after today's show is over.
It will. It'll explode. So.
We've got a great show today, and I'm glad to at least say hi to you at the beginning of it, because we're going to be talking with a guy that was flying a drone, lost control of the drone. The drone chased off a police helicopter, causing some air traffic control issues, and got arrested by the police for flying a drone and causing all kinds of chaos. So we're going to find out what the laws about drones are. So I'm looking forward to our first.
They're changing all the time. And there's so many idiotic and confusing laws out there right now. And now, of course, if you got a drone, you got to register it.
That's very true, starting December 21st.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you. We're going to see you next week on our Christmas Eve show. So thanks for joining us today.
Great and happy holidays. And I don't have to wish you a Merry Christmas yet, but
Not
I
yet.
will.
We're going to do that next week.
Okay.
By the way,
All right,
I want to remind you to subscribe to our free weekly show newsletter at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Every issue, every week, gives you an inside look at both the buzz and the industry, plus quick links to all the different segments on the show. Best of all, every issue is free. I'll be back with Owen Ouywang and Joseph Tully right after Randy Altman's perspective on the news.
This is Randy Altman's Perspective.
Randy Altman has been writing about our industry for more than 20 years. In fact, she's the editor-in-chief of her own website at postperspective.com. Hello, Randy. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
It's about a week until Christmas. You know, the excitement around here is just palpable, and I can imagine it's even more crazy at your place. So before we get hung up on the holidays, what's been happening this week?
Well, earlier in the week, I was having some fun watching social media sort of blow up about this whole, and I'm sure you're aware of it, this whole Beats by Dre, which is owned by Apple, how they had this help wanted ad for a non-Final Cut Pro editor. They wanted some Avid editors. So I had a really good time reading all the comments on all the different social media platforms. And what I've discovered is it's like editing wars. It's like crazy. People sort of, they latch on to a particular editing system and they hold on tight. And there are others who are just like, you know what, whatever works for the job. No one ever commented, oh, that was edited in a great way on that system, you know, in the theater or watching on their TV screen. So it's been very interesting. And then a couple of Final Cut Pro editors were like, good, more work for me. You guys do what you got to do and I'll take those jobs. So it's been pretty interesting. And I think it goes throughout the industry in terms of even the professional editors, because I've read some interviews with Kirk Baxter, who admittedly is not overly technical when it comes to his editing system. He relies on his assistant editors, and he gets creative, and that's what he likes. So he's not necessarily platform agnostic, but he's willing to work on what works for him.
You know, I did some homework on that Beats situation. Beats is a separate company from Apple. It's not part of Apple HQ, so they're totally independent. Apple HQ still is full Final Cut 10, but Beats, because it's a separate entity, it'd be as though you were deciding to enter with Premiere or Avid or Final Cut. It affects what you and your company do, but it doesn't affect what Apple does. Also, if you look at the headline, that was definitely written to generate clicks. So, yeah, it blew up. I got a lot of emails about that one myself. Yeah, what else have you been seeing going on this week, just before everything shuts down for the holidays?
Well, Red introduced a new camera. They've been spitting them out pretty good, haven't they? So it's the Scarlett W, and it's part of their Dragon line. So that's new. And then just getting back to the editing thing for a second, I heard today that, you know, Bandito Brothers, so Jacob Rosenberg and those guys, they actually purchased some Avid gear, and they're talking about using media composers as well. So a company that had been historically Adobe-based platform is opening itself up to more. So they're sort of using Avid and Adobe products as well. So I think that's how the world is going. I think that you're going to be using multiple.
Well, you know, one of the interesting things you said that I've felt for a long time is that all too often we define ourselves in terms of our editing tools as opposed to what we create with those tools. We define ourselves as a Premiere editor, an Avid editor, or a Final Cut editor, which is why these flame wars exist, because they challenge our existence. We're a Final Cut or an Avid person. Whereas I think a lot of editors need to define themselves as storytellers. And as you were pointing out, what tool do we need to use to tell the story that needs to be told? And that's something that I don't think the industry is ready to shift over to yet. We still want to be hung up on the technology and define ourselves in terms of the technology, not in terms of the results. What do you think?
I think part of that is true. I do see more people, though, willing to embrace other types of technology and sort of lose the whole technical aspect and just dive into the creative, at least some of the people that I've been talking to. So hopefully that will be a trend for the upcoming year.
Well, thinking of the upcoming year, I know that you've got plenty of stuff to do because your newsletter is about to publish, and I don't want to interfere with that. But I want to bring you back Christmas Eve and take a look at what trends you've spotted for 2015 to sort of look back at the year and give us a high perspective of what you noticed. Can we invite you back then?
Sure, I'd like that. Thanks.
We'll talk to you next week. Randy Altman is the editor-in-chief of postperspective.com, and you can visit her website at any time for some of the finest interviews in the industry. Randy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry.
To read more from Randy Altman, visit postperspective.com. Still to come on The Buzz. When you're working with media, one thing is essential. Your computer needs peak performance. However, when it comes to upgrading your Mac, there are so many different options to choose from that the process can be confusing. That's why Otherworld Computing carries the best upgrades that lets your computer performance and storage grow as your needs grow. Since 1988, OWC has become one of the most trusted names in quality hardware and comprehensive support to the worldwide computer industry. With an extensive online catalog of Mac, iPhone, and iPad enhancement products, as well as a dedicated team of knowledgeable experts providing first-rate tech support, OWC has everything you need to take your current system to the next level. Whether you need to maximize your system's memory, add blazing speed, or enhance reliability, look no further than the friendly experts at OWC. Learn more by visiting macsales.com today. That's macsales.com.
Last week, a police helicopter had to abort a stolen car chase in the San Francisco Bay Area town of Martinez. Why? They were on a collision course with a drone gone rogue, launched by a student who's now in the midst of a police FAA investigation. Tonight, we're joined by Joseph Tully, founder of the California criminal law firm Tully Weiss and author of California State of Collusion. He's consistently named among the top 100 criminal trial lawyers in America and holds a certified criminal law specialist designation by the California Bar Association, an honor held by less than 0.1% of lawyers. Hello, Joseph. Welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
And joining us as well is Owen Ouywang, the Chinese exchange student who was flying the drone at the time. Hello, Owen. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening. How are you?
Glad to have you both with us. Owen, I want to start with you and start with something simple. How long have you been flying drones?
I've been flying drones since I was a little kid, so I was flying the remote control helicopter since I was like 8 or 9 years old.
And tell us what model you were flying and what you were filming when this drone runaway occurred.
So the model that I was flying was an DJI Phantom 3 advanced model, and I have to clarify that I was not trying to get any pictures or videos during the time. I was just trying to fly the drones.
So explain the situation. What happened when you? How did you manage? Start at the beginning. What happened?
It was 8:30 or 9 in the evening, and I was trying to take out my drone to have a test flight. So I took it off from the front yard of my house. Then I started to fly the drone towards the east directions, and then I realized that there is a power line in the direction that I was trying to fly the drone. So I took the drone to the south direction. Then I believe there is some interference between the power line and my drone signal, and then I lost the signal of the drone, and it activated its default function, which is called a return to home function, and raises altitude to preset altitude and start to fly back. And I believe that is where the near collision happened.
And the incident, as I understand it, was the drone was about 750 feet in the air, give or take a little bit, and started to interfere with a police helicopter, which was in pursuit of a stolen car. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, this is what I heard from the news as well.
So how did the police connect you with the drone?
So after the return to home function activated by the drone itself, the drone started to fly back from where it loses connections with me. I heard about a helicopter flying over my head after the drone got close to me. However, I did not know that was a CHP helicopter until the police officer started to talk to me about it.
Well, that's got to be a scary moment. Joseph, what's the current law on flying drones? And was Owen obeying the law as you understand it?
Actually, he was. The scary thing about this situation is that this isn't a situation where you have somebody who's uninformed or being negligent or being reckless. Owen is a student pilot. He's flown 6 or 7 different types of aircraft, including a helicopter. Before he flew the drone, he had looked up the FAA guidelines and was doing his best to be safe and fly within those guidelines. To answer your question about the current law on drones is there's no real law about drones. So this situation is very analogous to automobiles. When automobiles first came out, there was no laws about vehicular manslaughter or anything like that. And as a society, we had to develop a body of law around this new technology. And that's where we're at now. So there could be maybe a battery. You know, if I punch you, that's a battery. If I throw a baseball at you, that's a battery. If I flew a drone at you, that would be a battery. Or assault with a deadly weapon, something like that. We could use those laws to apply them to this situation. However, we fully cooperated with the police and with the U.S. Department of Transportation. They determined that because this was in return to home function, there's no criminal intent or criminal negligence on Owen's part, and therefore there's no criminal liability. As I understand it, he's been cleared of any criminal charges at this point.
Now, the one thing that puzzles me is that there's a 500-foot limit to altitude with a drone, and the drone went up to 750 feet. Was this a problem with the manufacturer?
It's actually, it's a default setting in the drone, so it can be increased. And in this instance, Owen was in a situation where he's on a hill, there's other houses on that hill, there's other buildings in the area, and there's power lines. So he actually, being safety-minded, he increased the default so that if it ever did go into the return-to-home function, that it would fly up to a safe height and then return home so it wouldn't hit a building or a power line and fall down on somebody and hurt them. And Owen knows, being a pilot, that most pilots fly above 1,000 feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I want to point out is that Owen has been very proactive in stating what the problem is, stating what he did, stating how this has come out, and is serving as a role model spokesman to say, hey, pay attention to this, so that there's been no attempt ever to hide the fact this occurred. So, Owen, thank you very much for joining us and explaining this today. I want to make that really clear. But, Joseph, is Owen still responsible for flying the drone, even though the drone has gotten out of his control?
You know, that's a really difficult question, and the answer is probably maybe. Again, this is a new field in law, so it was in autopilot mode. He lost connection with the drone through no fault of anything that he did. I mean, is it somebody? Would it be your fault if your cell phone lost connection with somebody while you were guiding them someplace and they got lost? You know, in this case, the drone lost connection and through no fault of Owen's, and because it lost connection, it went into this return to home safety function.
Based upon this, and especially because he interfered with a police helicopter, what charges, if any, is Owen facing, or what penalties, if any?
Right now, again, he's been cleared of any criminal liability. So there's no federal charges, there's no state criminal charges. There's an issue, there's guidelines that you're not supposed to fly within 5 miles of an airport, and there's an airport nearby within 5 miles of where this was. So there may be a penalty with that, but my understanding is that there's no clear fines or penalties. Again, there's no real law, body of law around drones right now.
My understanding is that there's new drone legislation pending.
Yes.
Joseph, can you describe what that is?
Well, I've had a chance to review it very briefly, and it seems to be focused on just registration. So any drones between half a pound up to 55 pounds have to be registered with the FAA. And if you don't register, you face very stiff civil penalties of up to $27,500 and perhaps some criminal liability as well. But the regulations seem to be dealing with registration itself and not how to fly the drone or flying irresponsibly.
We have a live chat going on right now, and Owen, you've answered this question earlier, but Eric is asking, why were you flying the drone if you weren't filming at the time?
Okay, so I was just trying to test the the drone. So I mean, people who get a drone, they do not fly it only when they want to film. I was just trying to fly it around. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Basically practicing.
Yes, exactly.
And actually, he has a passion for flying. He's a student pilot. He's close to getting his license. He flies any kind of aircraft he can fly. He's going to school to become an airline mechanic. So he loves flying.
Yeah.
Joseph, should drone manufacturers provide a different kind of programming for their drones to help solve this problem? Is this a manufacturing issue? Is this a regulation issue, an airspace issue? Where do you think the boundaries lie?
I think there is a technological fix. I think the emergent technology of vehicle-to-vehicle communication, the Internet of Things where different objects can talk to each other, I think that should be implemented into drones as a fix to this. Also, my car, when I'm in cruise control, if somebody pulls in front of me, my car will slow down and adjust with the laser-assisted cruise control with the radar installed in it. And I think the drones having installed radar or vehicle-to-vehicle communication, I think would have avoided this incident.
Again, Joseph, if you were to give guidance to other drone operators who want to fly their drones responsibly and avoid the kind of problem that Owen's going through right now, what advice would you give them?
First and foremost, I would say that a drone is not a toy. So everybody who gets a drone under the tree at Christmas, don't wake up and just start flying it right away. Be very, very responsible with it. Again, Owen's situation is somebody who's intelligent, who's knowledgeable, and was trying to do the right thing, and yet still ended up in a bad situation, which could have been really bad. So I would say treat it extremely safe. Go to a waterfront, go to a place where people fly kites, where you can have visual sight with the drone at all times, stay away from crowds of people and objects. So a nice open flat area where there's not a lot of people would be the place to fly a drone.
Another legal question for you, Joseph. What's the liability rulings on drones? If damage is caused, who's liable?
I think we would have to go back to cars or aircraft and use existing law and start applying it by analogy to drones. So if I fly a drone through the window of your house and I purposely do that or I negligently do that, then I would be responsible for it. If I'm flying a drone responsibly and you are, I don't know why somebody would do this, but you're piloting erratically, maybe an airplane or something like that, then and you hit the drone just because you're driving or flying erratically, that would be your fault. And then I think there's probably going to be a big body of law relating to manufacturer's liability. For instance, had something happened here, as you pointed out, there's not a clear liability situation. The drone was in autopilot mode. It had been programmed to be safe, and yet there's no vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and there's no radar installed in the drone where it could have avoided hitting an object, a building, a tree, or another flying vehicle.
Owen, I can just imagine the stress you're under, and I very much appreciate your coming on the show and explaining the situation. So I hope this gets resolved successfully from your point of view.
Thank you very much.
And Joseph, for people that want to learn more about your law practice, which is amazing, what website can they go to?
Okay, they could go to tully-weiss.com, and that's Tully, T as in Thomas, U-L-L-Y, then Weiss, W-E-I-S-S.com.
And Joseph Tully himself was speaking. Joseph and Owen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Still to come on The Buzz. The folks at Blackmagic Design keep shaking up the industry. The new DaVinci Resolve 12 could be all the video editor you need. DaVinci Resolve 12 combines professional nonlinear video editing with the world's most advanced color corrector. So now you can edit, color correct, finish, and deliver all from one system. The brand new Blackmagic Video Assist is a high-resolution professional monitor and recorder that allows you to see a full-pixel 1080 image large enough so you can focus a DSLR camera accurately. And the new Ursa Mini cameras provide stunning quality with a 4.6K sensor and 15 stops of dynamic range. Compact, lightweight, and built from advanced magnesium alloy. When it comes to state-of-the-art technology, look first at Blackmagic Design at blackmagicdesign.com. That's blackmagicdesign.com. Have you ever tried to figure out how to pick the best camera? Or wondered if you were using the right gear on your project? Well, our next guest can help. Kendall Eckman is the regional manager for the Western North America section for Blackmagic Design, and we invited him here to answer that very question. Hello, Kendall, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
To put our conversation into perspective, how would you describe your role with Blackmagic? What do you do?
Well, as you said, I'm the regional manager for Western North America, so I handle the territory and I try to oversee pretty much everything that's going on in there, whether it's the resellers that sell our products, events, trade shows, even meeting with churches, schools, some of the high-end corporations, and even the studios.
Well, I'm going to give you the question that I get probably 3 or 4 times a day. And I know no one has a better answer for this than you do. In fact, you are the world's leading expert in answering this question. You sitting down?
Yeah.
He said with a panicked look on his face. So here's the question. What is the best camera?
The best well, that would be Blackmagic Design, of course.
Yeah, but that's the wrong answer as well, you know.
Well, we have a number of cameras, as you know, Larry. So for me to pick one out of the, I think it's 8 now that we carry, that would all depend on what kind of work you're doing, probably.
Now, that is the right answer. The best camera is not necessarily the camera you own. It's the camera that's best for the project.
Yep.
So this frustrates the heck out of everybody that sends me this email. They say, what's the best camera? And I say, it all depends upon what you're doing. So let's spend some time thinking about what cameras do. Every camera manufacturer has got a ton of specs associated with it. Which specs should we pay attention to? What are the most important?
Well, I mean, I'd say a few of them at the top of my list would be the format that you want to, present everything in, whether you need to go to high quality, you need something like a Cinema D&G RAW if you need to get out to RAW, or we have flavors of ProRes. So depending on how much time you want to put on a single card maybe, and the footage that you're going to do, you can go all the way down to the low proxy settings, or you can go all the way up into HQ on the ProRes. And then I would say even lens mount, as much as that doesn't sound like something you would look at. I know a number of people that have come to us at all the different shows and they've said, oh, well, I have a number of Canon lenses, so I need the EF mount, or I'm using PL lenses, so that comes into play. And now, of course, we've got into the B4, and a lot of people have B4 glass laying around, so they want to use those B4 lenses. So that might be something that you'd look at also.
Is there a quality difference between the different lens mounts?
To a degree, I think that you get into the micro four thirds, and they're maybe on the lower scale, but much more inexpensive and reasonable for people to get into the market and start shooting with. And then, of course, you can always do the different mounts on there. You can do different adapters, so you can take a micro four thirds and you can move to a PL or an EF if you need to.
Now, you're talking the micro four thirds is the size of the sensor. Does sensor size affect quality? Or, more importantly, what does the sensor size affect?
Well, from what I understand, the larger the sensor, you take a Super 35, you're going to have a shallow depth of field. So you could go in and maybe focus on someone's face where everything in the background would be blurry. And then it moves down to maybe a Super 16, like what is in our pocket camera or in our micro cameras, that type of thing.
If I'm looking at sensor size, do I consider the size of the sensor to be more important, or the quality of the lens that's in front of it?
That's probably equal. I'd say both. It just depends on what you're shooting. I mean, just for instance, a lot of people look at our little pocket camera that I mentioned, and that's a Super 16 size sensor, but that's been used in motion pictures, national commercials, $1,000 camera, and a lot of people come up at shows and they say, well, what would you really shoot this with? Corporate videos, and I said, well, it actually goes all the way up to scale. And I think on those, they probably do get into the higher lens choices, the most expensive lenses, when they're doing that type of shooting in motion pictures.
Another question is frame size, whether we should shoot 720 or 1080 or 2K or 2.5 or 4K. How should you decide what frame size to shoot?
Well, I would say if you're going to get up into something like 4K, that might be because you want to do some pan and crop and go around the image, so you have all of that room to work with. You might do that. But if you're doing commercials or you're doing corporate videos, then something in HD probably would be fine. We're finding nowadays that a lot of people are shooting in 4K primarily because some of the studios, I believe Netflix, I think even Sony is doing this with their on-demand stuff. They want it all shot in 4K at this point. And I believe some of that, and with our customers too, is that they want to come in and they want to have 4K for the future. So some of them are shooting in that resolution right now. But as you know, HD looks very good too.
Next big question is frame rate. What frame rate should I shoot? And I was reflecting, we used to have to only deal with 3. We had 24, 25, and 29.97, and now it seems like there's an unlimited number of frame rates. What should be your driving criteria on which one to select?
Well, again, it depends on what you're shooting. You're shooting something in motion pictures, you're going to get into 24 frames. But of course, what we've done is we've gotten into 60 frames. As you said, these weren't available before. You can get even into 120. Like on our Ursa Mini, you can do up to 60 in 4K, and you can do 120 in the HD. And then our big Ursa camera, you can do double that. You can do 120 in 4K and 240 in HD. And the reason for that is then you can go back and you can get it more of a slow-mo look. And that's what a lot of people are looking for, especially if they're doing sports or just any action shot and they want to have some slow-mo in there. They'll shoot in the higher frame rate.
Is another benefit of a higher frame rate sharper edges? In other words, less motion blur because we're shooting at faster frames, so you get a greater clarity to your picture?
Yeah, from what I understand, that's another reason, yep.
What's the relationship, if any, between shutter speed and frame rate? How do you determine what shutter speed to shoot at? In fact, with frame rate, what does shutter speed have to do with anything?
Well, from what I understand, the shutter speed is more to do with the still cameras, and we do shutter angle. So the shutter angle would be, for instance, we go from, I believe, 11 degrees up to 360, which is wide open. So if you went into about 180, it'd be half open, half closed.
Another big thing that we're seeing more about is dynamic range. What's dynamic range?
Well, it's really what you're going to get out of the camera as far as the color information, the shadows and highlights. So the more dynamic range, you're going to be able to see those shadows and highlights and pick up more information. For instance, our cameras right now have, most of them have 13 stops of dynamic range. And then you get into our new Ursa Mini and our big Ursa camera with the 4.6K that gets up to 15 stops of dynamic range. So for instance, if you're going to shoot a lot of low light shots, you're going to shoot maybe directly towards the sun, things like that, you're not going to have to go in and change as much. You're going to have a lot of color information and those shadows and highlights included in there. Is
dynamic range the same thing as HDR?
Not from what I understand. We haven't really got into the HDR. I'm just learning about it myself just recently. It seems like a hot ticket item right now. Of course, I wouldn't be able to tell you if we were moving towards that anyway, but I haven't heard anything, so I don't know. Usually I'm the last to know anyway, but that is a hot ticket item, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it. But from what I understand right now, it's really done after the camera process, more in post.
I'm not after trying to get you to pre-announce products because I really do want to keep you employed. But sure. I just want to be really clear that although a wide dynamic range gives us more latitude between the blacks and the whites, there is no Blackmagic camera today that shoots HDR. Is that a true statement?
That's true, yes.
So we had something, by the way, HDR, I've had a chance to see a number of technical demos, and it really is as cool as people say. I'm very, very excited by it. So by Tuesday, could you release something to support it, please?
Of course, we're right on that.
What questions should a filmmaker ask to decide what camera to get? In other words, what are the like the key 3 or 4 questions they need to have answers to pick the right camera?
Well, I think, again, we can go back to dynamic range is a big one. You know, how much information they need, quality, if they're shooting, you know, maybe a corporate video or something that doesn't need, you know, it's not a motion picture that they're going to put out there. They don't need to shoot in 4K. That could be something else they could look at and maybe not have to go into that 4K world quite yet. Although, like we discussed, most people are at this point. Most of the HD cameras are 4K capable that are coming out nowadays. And then just the formats. You know, what formats are easy to work in? I've heard from a number of customers, you know, if you want to get into the RAW, that Cinema DNG RAW that we have works very well. But of course, all those flavors of ProRes are very easy to work in, whether you're going into an editing program or something like DaVinci Resolve to do coloring, just something easy to work in.
One of the things that RAW requires is not only more file size, but it requires you to do a color pass. So if you're in a hurry and need to get stuff done quickly, shooting RAW would be a bad choice, and ProRes would be a better choice.
Exactly.
Are you seeing significant differences in quality between the various flavors of ProRes, or is ProRes 422 good enough? What do you think?
I think 422 is good enough, and I've actually heard that from a number of our customers that shoot for national commercials and television shows and things like that. And I have a few customers that tell me they only shoot in the ProRes format. Yeah.
For people that want more information about the products that Blackmagic offers, where can they go on the web to learn more?
Blackmagicdesign.com.
And Kendall Eckman is the regional manager for Western North America for Blackmagic Design. And Kendall, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Larry.
And have yourself a great holiday.
Still to come on The Buzz.
I want to invite you to become a member of our video training library. Our training library is unique in the industry. It includes more than 1,400 in-depth movies, each accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every movie in our library can be streamed to any internet-connected device. And it includes production and post-production, hardware, software, and techniques. It features current and past software releases from both Apple and Adobe. And unlike YouTube, all our training is complete. And unlike other websites, we focus exclusively on media production and post-production. Best of all, Our memberships are affordable, starting at only $19.99 per month. Focused, in-depth, accessible, and complete. This is the training that you need to solve problems, master new software, and expand your business. I invite you to become a member today. Thanks.
Welcome to Tech Talk.
If you haven't spent time with Premiere's libraries, you're missing a treat. Libraries were added in a release a little earlier this year, and libraries allow us to access, organize, and share design elements between applications and, with Creative Cloud support, computers and team members. Libraries are automatically synced to your Creative Cloud account. Libraries can be shared between Premiere, After Effects, and Photoshop, as well as all of Adobe's print applications. And new with this release is the integration of Adobe's stock image library with improved searchability and the ability to add stock images to your library, which can then be shared between Premiere and Photoshop and After Effects. At this time, libraries don't support video. And at this time, you can't copy a clip from Premiere into the library. It's more of an aggregating thing rather than sort of a sharing different elements. But the cool thing is libraries can be shared between projects, between computers, between applications, between collaborating team members. This is really neat. Let me show you how they work. Here, I've created a brand new project, and to access libraries, we go up to the window menu, go down to libraries, and it opens up a free floating window. Now, I've already got a few still images built into my library. We can create as many libraries as I want by going up to this flyout menu and saying New Library. But what I want to do here, let's just close this. We can switch between libraries. I've got a webinar library, but we'll work with my library, which is the default setting. We can see thumbnails, or we can see simply a list of clips. But I want to search Adobe stock. Let's find something, it's near Christmas. Let's look for snow, scene, snow, and forest. And now it goes out to the web, and it starts to find snowy forest scenes. And if I like it, I can click on it. It takes me to a website, which tells me more about it. And by the way, the first time you sign up, you can get 10 free images, which I'm jealously guarding. I'm not going to use them for this presentation. Hold the Control key down, and when you Control-click on it, we can view details on the web, which is the same thing as double-clicking, find similar shots on the web, or I want to save a preview to my library. And now let me just make my library a little bit bigger. And there is that stock image. Well, this stock image is now shareable between all the different Adobe applications that I have on my system. To add this to a project, all I have to do is grab it and drag it, and it's now added to my project. I can dock the library by grabbing the library and just pull it up to here, and now I've got the library docked as part of my workspace interface. If I want to add this to a scene, let's just create something nice here, and we'll add this to a project by dragging it over. And we will right mouse click on it, and we're going to say set this to frame size. I don't want to scale it to frame size. That gives up resolution. We learned that a couple weeks ago in our 4K and Premiere project that we talked about when we were shooting iPhone video. We'll go up to the effect controls. By the way, the cool thing about the effect controls is that the transform controls have now been GPU accelerated, which is just really nice because you don't have to waste time anymore. All this motion stuff is going to happen just unbelievably, ridiculously fast. And so we've got this very nice winter scene. Now, the cool thing is this is a low resolution image. It's got an Adobe stock watermark in it. But when I decide that this is exactly the image that I want to use for my project, because I can pull as many previews as I want without spending a dime, when I decide this is the image that I want for my project, I just simply go up to Adobe Stock, buy the image. It's swapped out all the new resolution is added, and any geometries, any transforms, any effects, all that stuff is applied to the new high-res, not watermarked image without me having to do anything. No reconciling of one file to another. It all happens magically in the background. Lynette Kent is a professional photographer who travels the world recording amazing landscapes. She's also an unconventional computer guru, a demo artist, and one of the leaders of the Adobe Technology Exchange of Southern California. This is a professional organization for graphics designers, photographers, and artists. Hello, Lynette. Welcome.
Hello.
Lynette, what first got you interested in photography?
Oh, gosh, that goes way back. Just taking photos, and my brother was a pro photographer, so I started doing it as well.
By the way, for those watching, to see Lynette's work, because we're going to be talking about it, visit her website at LynetteKent.com, LynetteKent.com, and view any of her galleries. And you'll be lucky if you're paying any attention to us once you take a look at her photographs. Lynette, before we talk about your creative work, I want to focus on the business of taking pictures. You do a lot of international travel. What gear do you pack, and how do you work around airline weight restrictions?
Well, that's a challenge. I started out with wearing a vest with all these giant pockets, and my husband was also wearing one, so we were filled with pockets, as well as both our backpacks. And that would have worked, except that I'm 5'3", and with this big vest on with camera pockets that could hold a 70 to 200 2.8 lens, they kept stopping me, saying I was carrying an extra bag, and they wanted to weigh my vest. And the last time that happened was we were coming back from Scotland, and I finally agreed. I said, okay, fine, you can weigh my vest in addition to my camera backpack. However, you can see that it is a vest, and I want to take out my personal items, such as my passport, and also my money, because your pounds in Britain weigh a lot. Anyways, the lady behind the counter gave up and did not ask me to weigh my vest, which would have sent me way over the 12-kilo limit. So now I'm looking at what else can we do. We've got a new kind of vest that isn't quite so obviously a bag. And then I think one of the solutions is to really decide which lenses and equipment you're taking and get yourself a Sherpa like my husband. A 6'1" Sherpa really helps.
Well, remind him he's not supposed to pack any clothing. It's all supposed to be gear.
Oh, no, the clothing goes in the check bags.
Ah,
There's
you go.
Nothing in the backpacks that is other than camera equipment.
Well, thinking about that, what cameras do you prefer to shoot?
Right now, I'm shooting Canon 5D Mark III, wishful thinking on the 4, and just a variety of their L glass.
Which gets me to my second question. Do you have lenses that you prefer in terms of manufacturers and or focal length?
Well, actually, I love the 70-200 from Canon, except not the f2.8, which most people prefer. I like the f4 IS lens. It's much lighter weight, so it's easier for me to handhold and manage everything and to get it in that bag. And it's just easier all the way around. And it actually, to me, it feels sharper than the f2.8 lens. And then the other one I really love right now is my newest lens, my 100-400 version 2 from Canon. It's got incredible reach, and it really makes things, again, it's light enough weight that I can handhold it.
Are you picking Canon because it's from the same company as makes your camera, or are you picking it because of the weight, or are you picking it because of how it looks?
Well, looks is always really important, but no, it's probably because it's L glass and the reputation that Canon has. I do have a Sigma lens and I have a Tamron lens, but those, you asked which were my preferred lenses right now, those were it. And then a 24. I'm still looking for what I want for a wide angle.
Well, I've looked at almost all the galleries on your website. Your Arizona cowboy is wonderful. The shots from Hawaii were wonderful, though I have a creative question for those.
Okay.
And the south of France just were liquid, which brought me to, are you capturing these images in camera, or is there massive Photoshop massaging going on after the fact?
Not really massive Photoshop. I got very lazy when Lightroom came out, and I don't really work that much in Photoshop or even Lightroom. It's I take way too many photos, so I have to sort, and then I'm really just doing, double checking the white balance, of course. But I usually do that in camera with a color checker passport from X-Rite, and sometimes I create a profile for the camera, but it just depends. If it's a sunset or a sunrise photo, I leave it as it was in camera. As far as the colors go, I might remove a dust blur on the lens if I spot one, but I'm pretty careful with my lenses and try to keep them really clean. So try to avoid that. I try to avoid most post if I can.
Which is interesting, because there's a lot of people that prefer to work in post and just capture something and then manipulate it in post because they want more of a surreal effect. And you're really trying to do hyper reality, as far as I can tell.
Yes. Yeah, I like traditional, real painting and photography.
Thinking about that, your work tends to be outdoors. Do you do any lighting at all with your scenes? Are you shooting in HDR format? And if you are doing lighting, how are you lighting it?
Well, I don't I love it. I don't like to shoot people, basically, because I'm just really bad at it. And so I do like scenics, and that comes from my painting background. I did landscape painting and watercolors. And so I learned mostly to do that, and that's what I see when I look through the viewfinders. I'm seeing what could have been or could become a painting. And so I'm actually not lighting anything outdoors. I'm not. I have used a reflector, but nothing that's on those galleries.
Now, I noticed that in your image, you're still being able to retain shadow detail. I'm thinking of the window that's looking out into to a landscape, and some of your foreground shots, and you're still holding detail in the sky. Are you using grad filters here, or are you using HDR?
I don't think there's anything on the website that has HDR, although I've done it a few times. I did get into the filters, the graduated ND filters, as well as ND filters, especially for slowing water and stuff. But I don't, no, I'm not. I don't know if you're referring to one of the ones looking through a window outdoors.
The windows were half open. The one on the right was a little bit more open than the one on the left. And we were looking through that, and we were holding the shadow detail of the texture of the wood of the windows and still holding the light outside. It looked like there had to be some light there.
There was light outside, and there was light in the room, and it was very gray outside. So even though the light outside is much more powerful, because it was dark and gray and a gloomy day, if it's the one I'm thinking of, the light from the inside actually helped. And then that probably was a little bit of Lightroom lightening to the shadows use. Oh, I do that a lot. I lighten up the shadows, but you have to be real careful because you end up with too much noise.
With the water shots that you're doing, you have such a liquid, molten, soft flow to the water. Is that a time exposure or something else that you're doing?
It's usually a long exposure using some kind of an ND filter so that you can do a long exposure, obviously. And the trick there actually is learning how fast the water is moving, and then is that going to be a 10-second, 5-second, 1-second shot? What is it going to be so that it doesn't look like foam and yet you have water movement, but it has a liquid flow? So I usually try about 20 or 30 of those shots and pick the one I like best.
But
it's
a fairly long exposure, 5 or 10 seconds.
Yes, it is. It depends. Like if it's a waterfall and it's just flowing, then you need to slow it. It's like cascading really hard. You need to slow it more. If it's a slow-moving waterfall, then you can go a little bit less.
Water falls slower in some places than other places?
Well, it depends. If you're at the base of a very, a 300-foot drop, the water looks like it's just pounding down, and it seems like you can go a little bit faster than you can if it's kind of rippling over rocks. Yeah, water. it's wrong to say that it flows at a different rate, but it actually feels like it.
With the shots you did at Hawaii with the molten lava,
Oh, yeah.
there was almost a lack of scale. I couldn't tell if I was looking at something which was macro or something which was huge. Was that intentional?
I was in a helicopter shooting with a 500 millimeter lens. So I was almost right on top of it.
Wow.
My legs were burning in the copter. We had an open door, and yes, it was hot.
Unbelievable.
We were about 15 feet above the flow.
I just realized, do you do your work principally on assignment, or do you just love traveling?
I love traveling. Someday I'll do some assignments, but most of these have been just for, because I just enjoy creating them. I used to use a lot of my own photos in my books when I was writing for Wiley Publishing on Photoshop. So I would use either the good ones or the bad ones to illustrate a point on how to do something. But recently, they've just been mostly for my pleasure.
Well, I should mention that you even sell these photos on your website, and I encourage everybody to buy 6 or 7 for Christmas.
Oh, that would be great.
And
a series of cards, too.
Is there a market for photos online?
That I'm not sure of.
No, I'm just saying, are you able to make any money at all from selling your photos? Or is it really just a labor of love?
It's more a labor of love right now. I would love to sell a few. I think there should be some very large ones put into some big conference rooms in some important companies' walls. That would be great. But right now, it adds something to the travel. You have something you take home.
Souvenirs.
I never buy souvenirs. And so I create my own souvenirs in a sense. But I think going back, and if you've taken a wonderful trip to some beautiful places around the world, including in this country, it just brings back the memories every time by looking at really great photographs that you took. I think that's what excites me a lot.
Well, you have a spectacular painterly look to your images. And for people that want to learn more, what website can they go to see your work?
To see my work would be www.LynetteKent.com.
That's all one word, Lynette Kent, LYNETTEKENT. And Lynette herself is the person we're talking to. Lynette, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's time for a BuZZ flashback. 5 years ago today.
Since I can't advise you people out there to breathe in order to relax, my offer to you is write me a letter and just write what's going on, your frustrations, your fears, your loneliness, even your accomplishments. Whatever it is, just write it, email it to me, and I promise I will read it. And then you can just relax a little bit more, knowing that a complete stranger is out there and knows how you feel.
This was a BuZZ flashback.
It's interesting thinking about the photographs that Lynette shoots and how it takes something in real life and transforms it into something totally different. They're rich, they're saturated, they're very painterly, they're a traditional landscape and fun to look at. I want to thank this week's guests, starting with Owen Ouywang, Joseph Tully, Kendall Eckman, and Lynette Kent for some really interesting interviews. Also, starting next week, we have 2 very special shows planned. Our Christmas Eve program brings together all our BuZZ regulars for a look back at the significant trends, hardware, and software of 2015. Then, in 2 weeks, on New Year's Eve, we'll bring the gang back together again for some fearless future casting, looking at hardware and trends to watch during 2016. I think you'll find both these shows well worth watching as we talk with Philip Hodgetts, Randy Altman, Jonathan Handel, Michael Kamas, Larry O'Connor, and Ned Soltz. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter. You can talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner with additional music provided by smartsound.com. text transcripts provided by Take One Transcription. Visit takeone.tv to learn how they can help you. Our producer is Serena Catania. Our production team is led by Megan Paulos and includes Ed Golia, Keegan Guy, Lindsay Lubert, and Brianna Murphy. On behalf of Mike Horton, who is hiding in his house this evening, my name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for joining us for the Digital Production Buzz, and a very happy holiday to you. Have a good night.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Otherworld Computing, providing quality hardware solutions and extensive technical support to the worldwide computer industry since 1988. And by Blackmagic Design, creating revolutionary solutions for film, post-production, and television.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from the Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching the Digital Production Buzz.